If any other questions come up about that, we'll get back to them. But great job as always by all the teams involved, and of course, I saw that a bunch of the actual node runners themselves were coordinating on making sure everything was running well. So shout out to all y'all as well. So moving on to what I think may be a light call for a lot of us, given that so many folks are gearing down this week. Let's talk about node running in general and all the questions that we've seen about that along the way. Anane, are you asking a question or are you just unmuted? Mm-hmm. Okay, and there you go. So I've seen a number of the usual suspect type questions in channels this week between hardware spec and various error messages and response times and all the rest of that. Who's got a node running question that you want to put up to the team while we're here?
I will say this: I am excited because I'm pulling together a document that outlines the different errors that I get frequently asked about. Like if you go to Pocket Scan and you click on your node, you'll see potentially a bunch of errors. And I'm kind of working with the team, coordinating to get all that information, so there will be one place that people can go, and if they want to see what their errors mean, a lot of them, are aren't really an error, and so you don't need to worry about it. And then there's some that can, provide insight that could potentially lead to troubleshooting or helping figure out if you're, running anything inefficiently. So I'm actually in the middle of putting that document together, and hopefully we can get it up very shortly.
Beautiful. I know that's a common question is when people are monitoring the actual Pocket node running, if you've got like your SS or CLI window up and you're watching all that go by, so much information is happening in all of that time. And I know people key on various error messages and such, which are really just sort of network messages about errors occurring on the remote chain itself, correct?
Well, that's what I'll get down to the bottom of. So
Beautiful.
that you can basically see, search for this message, and see what the issue is, and potentially what the remedy is.
Awesome. And is that something like I know that some of the different dashboards are trying to build in like actual important error reporting versus what's not important. Is that something that is potentially a Node Pilot feature as well coming up?
Oh yeah, we're looking at all sorts of monitoring features and things of that nature. So yeah, potentially directly in NoPilot, but at least regardless, having all this information in a searchable way, so users on their own can kind of debug some different issues that they might have. Yeah, that's kind of at least the first step. Get the knowledge base together, and then from there, we could potentially add more to NodePilot to automate some of that error tracking and fixing and things of that nature. But this will be something that will be good for anyone outside of NodePilot as well.
Nice. Good. Well, we much appreciate that. It's really kind of crazy seeing how all of the different tools are coming up, from actual members in the community, even projects that have been I don't like to use the word abandoned, but perhaps not updated for some time. We're seeing some work done in the background to get those up and running as well. So if you see a need in the community, if you see that there's something that's not there or some additional dashboard or reporting, and you feel like contributing to that, find the other folks who are doing the same thing and get on board. That's definitely part of being in the DAO and what it's all about. All right. Other questions about node running? Who just unmuted?
I just unmuted. This is Ming. I just got a quick question. I know Algorand is up and coming in terms of getting added, or maybe it's already been added to the network. But of course, PocketScan hasn't displayed that yet. So is there any estimation of when that will be included? And then, as well as, is there any estimation of how much of a relay they're going to be transmitting over to Pocket?
So the pocket scan question itself, I don't see Jorge on the call. Maybe he'll pop in, and if he's here, he can give us an update. But yeah, I noticed that when we were looking yesterday, when we were talking about the onboarding of Algorand, that it doesn't seem like it's on any of the dashboards currently. What's for somebody who's actually involved with getting Algorand up and running? What's the current state of where that's at now? Should people be building Algorand nodes now in preparation for connecting them? Not sure who that would be appropriate to. Irving, maybe?
Hey Jinx, this is Alex.
Alex,
I'm
perfect.
Yeah, I'm just checking just to make sure I don't misspeak to make sure that it's whitelisted. But I believe Algorand is whitelisted and pays out. So it should be available in the portal UI. No, I'm sorry, it is not whitelisted for revenue. So it's available on the network. It means it's in beta, so we would like people to support it. And at some point in the near future, it will be whitelisted and start to generate relays and revenue.
Okay, fantastic. And I imagine that some of the major node providers are already starting to spin that up in their space. I guess it's time for us to start playing with that in our bare metal side.
Yeah, we usually announce it. This is all on the growth team actually, so it's not really my area of expertise. But I sit in on the new chains calls. They'll announce when it is going to be whitelisted for revenue well ahead of time. So they always ask me, how long does this take to spin up? I give them an estimate, and then they definitely leave that enough leeway so that everyone, including every player, small players, big players, have a chance to earn those first relays when it gets whitelisted. But it is available now, so if you do want to spin it up now, get experience in running it, see that it's stable. I run archival, and if I remember off the top of my head, it's about 750 gig, so a little under a terabyte. I don't recall it as being super picky. It's not a BSC, it's not a Polygon. So yeah, if you have the space, go ahead and spin it up. But it would take someone on the growth team to tell us when that schedule is.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, that's good to know. We'll start experimenting with that. I hate to put you on the spot, Shane, but I figure you're probably one of the few who can actually answer this question. When it comes to adding additional chain support on NodePilot, what's y'all's process with that?
Right now, it is added to Node Launcher. So Node Launcher is the open source library. We're in the process of adding some chains. We're building out a validator API right now and a bootstrapping API because we ran into, say, for like Harmony, we ran into a snag where trying to sync from scratch is not recommended. So what we've done is we're creating an API in Node Launcher itself so that it could actually work with bootstrapping snapshots as well. So this would mean for Harmony, it would automatically bootstrap if, well, it can be user decide. User can decide you want to bootstrap or not. And for Harmony, it's recommended. Or else we actually have Harmony working other than the syncing because the syncing is a bit of an issue right now. So they recommend doing the bootstrap. So kind of in that process of adding Harmony, we realized, oh, well, maybe we should build out this API so that bootstrapping can just be done all through through Node Launcher itself. Which again, Node Launcher is the open source engine that anyone could use to deploy nodes. Or use to create an application for deploying nodes. So really, once it's added to that library, adding it to NodePilot is actually super, super simple because NodePilot just uses all the APIs from Node Launcher. So we are going to be scaling the nodes that are being added. I did have a cool conversation last week with a project that wants to integrate themselves potentially into Node Launcher, and that would be where they do it completely on their own. And those that are closest to the on what running a node for a specific chain, the ones that are closest to that knowledge, it actually is way easier for them to add their own nodes to Node Launcher, and then once it's in Node Launcher, adding it to NodePilot would be super easy. And we have self checks and all sorts of stuff. So if there's any other updates, actually, just yesterday I got a cool demo of what our automated checking system looks like in Node Launcher, where it just goes through and it tests all these RPC calls and basically identifies if this is going to be a breaking change or not. And so yesterday we updated Avalanche, and it went through and checked everything, and it was not a breaking change, so it was automatically able to be added, so that NodePilot users, if they check their dashboard, they'll see a little update button next to Avalanche where they can update to the latest. And so that Avalanche release was just released, I think, the day before last. So NodePilot users can be on the most recent Avalanche version. So anyways, all that to say, where that same capability comes to any chain that's added to NodePilot or added to Node Launcher. And so that's the kind of the important part, the reason we're focusing on Node Launcher versus trying to do hard codes into NodePilot is so that this whole suite of APIs and checks and everything are for every single chain that NodePilot supports.
Okay, so Avalanche is you said already supported, or it's just in progress?
Yeah, Avalanche has been one of our we support probably like 8 different clients right now or something like that. And then once we finish Harmony, that'll add the bootstrapping API as well into the mix. And then from there, yeah, we are going to be moving very quickly into new chains, because the kind of foundation of Node Launcher is already there. So adding new chains is going to be significantly more streamlined.
That's awesome. And I know that there's a lot of people that have been excited about Avalanche and Algorand and some of the other stuff in the pipeline. The Evmos launch in particular is something that we're all watching. Nobody quite has a sense of what the scale of that is yet. But certainly something that we're paying attention to, given that they're launching on Pocket from the beginning. I mean, for me, that's a use case of like best possible case scenario for a new product rolling out, to have Pocket baked in from the beginning. Does anyone have any idea what we're expecting from Evmos traffic?
It really depends on the team, right? But like you said, we're there to be there from the beginning. It's a very fast chain. I would call it similar to Harmony, maybe even faster and bigger. So it is on the higher skill level to run and keep running. Not sure how fast it's going to be growing, but it does grow pretty quickly and was pretty tough to catch up with Sync. They do have snapshots now, and evidently snapshots work fantastically for doing that, much like Harmony. These fast chains that have 2-3 second block times, it's almost impossible to sync from scratch. Like Harmony sometimes is impossible to catch up to, even when you use a snapshot. So yeah, I'd recommend definitely testing Evmos out. We're there for their incentivized testnet, and we're going to be there when they turn on mainnet, and testnet will remain a separate chain ID.
Awesome. That's really good to hear. And I know that a lot of folks have been, like, Storage was offering a blockchain snapshot for Pocket's chain itself. All of those snapshots are absolutely the way to go if you're trying to, as opposed to syncing from scratch. But is there a best approach to how to do that? I mean, is something like rsync the right way? Have a local copy of the snapshot that you're rsyncing to, or what are the recommendations?
Well, some chains you can certainly sync from scratch. Like I sync Aragon from scratch a lot of times, takes 5 days to a week, maybe up to a week now. I let the ETH testnets sync from scratch. They come up in a day or so. So lots of stuff you still can sync from scratch, even XDAI archival, if you're patient, is a week or two. The snapshots really are necessary, though. Like I said, when the chain speed is so fast, Harmony, like I was struggling last week using their method to even catch up. And their method specifically is rclone. And rclone is nice. It's sort of like a rsync working from cloud provider. Like I think they're backing with S3. So you copy in a little config. It does a rsync. They actually updated it a little while ago to use more streams on the rsync. So it's fairly quick to grab the snapshot. But again, the chain moves so fast, you then have to start it up right away and then again wait for it to catch up. You can't keep that backup locally because it'll just be out of date. So really, it's follow the method provided by the chain. Evmos is slightly different. Like they don't use our clone, but it's available and it downloads fairly quickly and then catches up fairly quickly.
Nice. Okay. That's good to know. I know a lot of folks who have been dabbling are now starting to get a little more serious into building some of this stuff. Some of the conversations that we have in the Poctopus Den and all that are really nitty gritty. I'm kind of, I guess, not really surprised, but impressed maybe is the better word at how some of these low level or like not low level, but like system level sysadmins are out there digging into, hey, this works a little better. I can tweak it this way, and like getting really enthusiastic about the future of Pocket. So it's awesome to see. Who's got another question?
Hey guys. Hey, this is Taha here. Is this the place to, I guess, ask questions about? I'm new to running a node on for Pocket and follow the guidance stuff, and a few of the team members have been helping me, but I noticed a few things that are missing in the documentation that would be helpful to add. Is this the place to bring them up?
Absolutely. I mean, you literally could not have a better cross section of expertise than what's in this call.
Okay, so yeah, so I followed the instructions on your YouTube channel, Pocket Network. It was like the playlist about how to set up a Pocket node, zero to node, all that process. I think so. Follow those instructions and Ben Van's guide, and I was able to. I tried to first set up the node on testnet, and I was able to get all the way to a full node running, and it was synced and all that. So that was great. The problem came through when I was trying to check status of my node, like when I would query through localhost on port 26657 and check the status, it would work, but anything externally would not. And I tried like looking at my security groups in AWS, firewall, everything, like none of that was working until I checked someone else's status call and realized that the, I guess it's the RPC listener address or RPC address that's listed in the config, that is set up differently than what the default setup is supposed to be. So I guess at some point you're supposed to change that, but it's not in the instruction anywhere. And that would be helpful to add. I couldn't find any documentation that said to do that other than me just like looking at, I believe it was a setup shared in the Discord channel that I had to reverse engineer. I can share my screen and show what I'm talking about. Maybe I'm off or not understanding something.
Hey, Taha. No, this is Alex. How you doing, man?
Hey.
So I know what you're talking about because I've been working with you on the issue in the background as well.
Alright.
There were a few issues. One of them was the security group did need to be open, so that wasn't open initially. But the real crux of it is that we typically don't tell people to open that status up publicly. So that's not typically part of the docs. Like that's a private sort of Tendermint status that you wouldn't normally expose on your public listening address. Now I know why you're doing it and why you're specifically doing it is a different reason, but that would be the reason I think why it's not included in our docs, our first party docs, or in Ben Van's YouTube or instructions. So those instructions by Ben Van are simply community provided. And they're quite old. I think they still work. Obviously, I'm not going to call them out of date, but they are. They've been around for quite a long time. So Ben Van perfectly might be willing to update those, but those are community provided. Now, if there's something in our docs, specifically docs.pocket.network, you can get a step closer to a DAO vote by just submitting a correction or an improvement yourself to the GitHub, and that gets you a step closer to a DAO vote. So we always encourage actual just correction of it. If you do see something that's wrong, we'll approve the PR, and that's that. But yeah, that status config is typically like I would doubt that anybody here exposes that publicly, for reasons, because you don't want to expose your config to the public. But I know why you're doing it personally.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's what I wanted to clarify because I've seen a few sort of I guess the configs that people have set up where it was exposed, and that's what was confusing me because it didn't clarify why we would need to expose that out. I guess people are doing it for their own reasons when they are exposing the status.
Yeah, I mean everybody's setup is different. Like lots of people don't run Docker. For me, I Docker exec into the container, and I can run that status through a curl, get the response back. I can even do that through Ansible from a remote machine. So, yeah, like I typically don't expose that because I just have another way to call it if I want to see the peering status.
Okay, fair enough. That clarifies it then. And yeah, I see that the Ben Vance docs are, I think, more community docs. For that, I can just submit some requests, I guess, and suggestions over there. And then if, as far as the Pocket docs, I'll continue to go through. My goal is to, I guess, go through and turn this testnet node into a validator node, and then deploy everything on mainnet, and I guess kind of go from there.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, sweet. Well, thanks for answering that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, like if you want to relate your experience and tips and tricks and all the rest of that, and it's not something that you're adding to the official docs, it's more of just a, hey, I built a node on Pocket and this was my experience and this is what I did and the steps and all the rest of that. If you're creating that on your own blog or website, by all means, tweet it out and at me in the tweet, and I will certainly help signal boost that. And I'm pretty sure that is definitely qualifies for at least one of our community incentive programs. So, we appreciate that sort of thing. I'm not sure if it counts towards the actual Node Runner achievement, although maybe it should. But absolutely feel free to document your own experience and share that.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Other questions? Who's next? Questions about the protocol, questions about the network, questions about supported chains. Well, hey, I mean, it's the Wednesday before Christmas and the call's light. And if nobody has any serious questions, I'm happy to wrap things up early and give y'all a little bit of your time back. But I'm going to hold it open here and leave the mic running for another couple of minutes or so just to make sure that everybody's had a chance. And it doesn't have to just be like hardcore technical questions. If you have, questions about the concept in general, if you're not running a node yet and you want to understand better how things work, these kinds of calls are good for that as well.
Hey, I have a question for the runners.
Shoot.
So we made a very conscious effort to have communication about what was going on during the situation yesterday, right? Small crisis we had, and I would like to know whether anyone have feedback from everybody or anybody. How do you feel about the pace of communication, the contents of communication, and those things?
Aiden, I know you were paying attention yesterday and you're running some bare metal. I think my opinion, I'm always in the middle of a lot of communication, so it probably looks like a lot to me. From your perspective, how did it look?
Hey, Jinx. Hey, guys. It was great, honestly. It was frequent, which is always a plus when any communication happens. I thought it was great, and then no issues really. I knew the team was going to resolve it.
Beautiful. Anybody else want to provide some feedback on that?
Yeah, it truly was great job. By far the best communication I've seen when we've had an issue that we're working out together as a network. So absolute kudos to Irving for kind of heading up that comms. I will say the I think it would make node runners pay more attention, or I guess not gloss over, if we use the @node tag when there's either letting them know that there's a crisis or a situation happening, and then if when there's an action item. I think for the general updates, I personally would prefer not always getting a ping, because I always feel like with a ping, like there's something to do. But if it's like a general update to something that's happening, not have a ping there. I'd love to hear what other people's take was as they were getting pings yesterday. Was it? What do you like getting the direct pings, or only when there's like an action item to do, or just or the initial letting us know that something's up, and then the action item. So I'd be curious what other people's take on that was.
Well, while we wait to see if anybody else wants to weigh in on that, I'll say that, for me, being subscribed to, I think, every available communications channel for Pocket, it was really notable to see the entire team out in force across all channels, including Michael himself, jumping into unofficial and, making sure that everyone paying attention everywhere was on point. That seemed really strong to me. And I don't mind getting push notifications when it's something important. In fact, sometimes that's really helpful given the amount of comms that I'm reviewing on a daily basis. Something that actually, lights up a channel with that red notifier is generally more effective at making sure I actually see it.
Well, cool. That's good feedback. So I might see it a little, or had just had a little different of an experience, but it's actually good to hear that that was actually very helpful. So that's awesome.
Cool. Okay. Next question.
I had a question, actually more of a discussion, and it's probably something that every node runner faces when they're running a node is hitting their storage limits, especially with all these chains growing so fast and new chains being brought on. Sort of best practices on maybe adding a chain or even upgrading a server or your instance. What do we do when some of these will eventually hit over a terabyte each? So if anybody has any ideas or experiences with that, that'd be great.
Well, I see that Q Spider has joined us, and he certainly has some experience with having to reprovision node instances due to storage issues. Are you on mic, Q?
Hey, yeah. I just had to rebuild the node. I didn't guess the timing on it quite right, so I've had to rebuild a couple times. But yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. I just know. I guess it's based on or they think it'll grow or double once a year. So every couple of years it'll double. So that's the best guesstimate I have.
And that's certainly an issue for anybody running, especially, large stacks of bare metal with cloud. A lot of times you'll have the ability to kind of shift on the fly, or at least with limited interruption, reprovisioning to a larger storage block. But when you're running on pure NVMe, running on a motherboard, that's definitely a different environment, and so that's something that absolutely has to be accounted for in your strategy. If you're not actively monitoring, I mean, all your alerts should fundamentally be, well, of all your alerts, storage should be fundamentally one of the most important that you're paying attention to on a regular basis. It seems for the most part like it's not terribly bad if you're getting close, because you may be jailed for a little bit as long as it takes you to reprovision and get things started. But that depends entirely on what your setup is. If you've got a box that is maxed out and you're running close to capacity, and that's a situation where you may end up having to do like actual hardware swaps, and then you're transferring data from one drive to another. You've got all that read-write time. There's a lot involved there, so certainly a consideration that you want to stay ahead of the game on. Excuse me.
Yeah, they released an update too, I think, that shrinks the blockchain a little bit. I don't know if that's out already, but I think this one, this new patch 7.701, is growing a lot slower, or it's actually reducing the blockchain size.
It's the expected outcome of reducing the total validator count, because you have so much data happening when every node on the network was participating in a validation process, or every node in a relay in particular. Having a fewer set of dedicated validators reduces the total network conversation required to achieve consensus, and thus less data in the block store. Have I explained that correctly? Y'all more smarter folks than me?
You nailed it.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I think, it's really funny that we forget that Pocket is V0.7 next. We haven't even gotten to a full V1 yet, and we've already seen significant improvements in optimization and efficiency, which helps improve block times and reduce total storage size. I am confident that further efficiency and further optimization remains a top priority and focus for the protocol and development teams.
All right. This is something I've posted around on some forums. I just did a screen share because this is a question that even on some of the most technical forums, I'm not really getting a clear answer to. And so I would be curious with hardware node runners if they if what their take on it might be. So I'll quickly explain what this is. So this is I'm basically asking the question, which is not true. So here you have number one, which is you have like 2 hard drives, and you have like I say app here, but I really mean like say you have one node. So say you have an Aragon node on one, and you have a Solana node on the other, or something like that, right? And so that NVMe is maybe or that app or whatever requires like 22K or that hard drive, I guess, has about 22K IOPS in terms of the random reads and writes that it can do. So number one is you basically have a node on one NVMe and a node on the other, and the app is able to take advantage of 22K on each. Well, on number two, you have them in RAID 0, right? So on RAID 0, is it that because my understanding is you can add more throughput in terms of the amount of bandwidth that can be written to a drive. You can increase the throughput. So if they can do 100 or 100 gigs a second, or whatever. I know that's crazy fast. When you have it in RAID, you can almost do like 200. It kind of doubles the amount that you can do with like read and writes, but that's not random read and writes. Random read and writes are pretty much standard, from my understanding, with RAID 0. But what I'm not sure about is, does it create a bottleneck when you have RAID 0 and you have 20? Because the random read and writes, each application is it reading? Does each drive?
I can answer this. I can answer this for you.
It? Okay, yeah,
sure,
yeah, great.
Neither 2 or 3 are correct. Both are both wrong. 2 is the most correct. So go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was planning to give that answer.
Oh yeah, another drive speed aficionado, Irving speaks up. Neither 2 or 3 correct. 2 is more correct, but it differs what that RAID 0 interface is. So back in time, back before my beard was so gray, you wouldn't do RAID 0 without a hardware RAID. Like, if you actually expected to get more throughput, more bandwidth, you would use hardware RAID card, LSI, something that has a brain on it itself with a battery backup, and it controls the RAID, and it has chips meant especially to do nothing else but RAIDing. And that's the only way that you would get number 2, and it would be very close to number 2. Not quite full throughput as separation, but very close with a hardware RAID card. Today, software RAID is actually pretty good. I use software RAID everywhere. I use MDA, DM, Medatom. Is a typical Linux software RAID. It's very close to number 2. It's definitely better than number 3. Irving.
Precisely. There's one more factor besides that. You covered the hardware angle very well.
PCI bandwidth throughput.
Yep, that's beautiful. But then you have depending on the workload that you have, The way
Yep.
that the data is sliced onto the different disks is not necessarily aligned with the data access pattern of your application. And of course, the disk has no idea who is asking the information to be stored. It only sees it as the operating system. So yes, for two applications with non-deterministic access patterns of data, you lose a lot of IOPS. You get closer to the 22 on the average.
Okay, so basically, having so number 3 would be essentially true if, depending on how the apps themselves operate.
Not exactly. So let me try to explain it. The way that RAID 0 works is that it decides whether to put some information in one disk or another, right?
Right.
But it has no information of what sort of workload is asking for the information to be stored or received. So it cannot do this hot proxy kind of thing where it load balances the information. It doesn't have that insight. So if you do that, what is going to happen eventually, as the data access patterns are random, is that you're going to have a lot of things that you're going to have app 1 and app 2 both trying to get information from the same disk. And that's when you get 22K IOPS.
Because
the write is more efficient than the read.
Got it. Okay, so it actually depends on which disk it's on, because okay, that actually makes a lot of sense now, because I was having a hard time justifying all of this, because I know that the NVMe can't go faster than what it is, right? So if it's 22K, it can't go faster than that, right? So which is why, everywhere that you talk about RAID 0, they always say you won't get faster IOPS, and I think that is kind of in general true, because that's true. If you have two different applications and they both need information from NVMe 1, you're still at the limitation of that one IOPS. Now, if the information is on NVMe 2, well, that has then you're using the IOPS from that drive. So okay, that makes a lot of sense. Really appreciate you explaining that, because I've actually posted this a few places online, like asking people which one, and I was actually surprised that no one really had good answers or could explain it. So leave it to Pocket. That's awesome. Really appreciate it, Alex and Irving.
I'd like to say that I started with my home servers in setup 1 because I knew that was the absolute fastest. Like you're not putting anything in between, but it's really inconvenient. I ended up going to setup 2.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, why would you want to have to share the availability between apps if you could not do that?
Because it's difficult, much more difficult to manage. So I was spreading Pocket nodes and blockchain nodes out between them, but all of a sudden I wanted to shift around my blockchain nodes. I didn't have enough free space for one of them, so I was like, oh god, I have too many disparate drives and nothing joined together to make enough space for this now. It's not as convenient. Like you have to really know what blockchains you're going to host. You have to put them on a certain place, and they don't move. And you have to hope you don't outgrow them.
Okay. I wanted to mention, and this goes in line with every time I get the opportunity to say this, I do. I think the best thing to do is to have every app with a RAID 0 of its own.
Yeah. Oh, if it's possible, like you're on cloud, like you suggested was correctly.
Yeah.
Cloud, like give each one its own volume. Absolutely, don't share the volumes. But when you're plugging in the NVMEs yourself and you have to order them, and there's a shortage, and getting large ones is nearly impossible, sometimes you end up, yeah.
Yes. The other thing I would like to bring up is, and I know it is common knowledge for many people, so don't judge me. But if you have any way to estimate the peaks of execution, then you can spread it out so that you don't have peaks of information moving. So if you have related chains, for instance, or whatever, or if you can have your Pocket node in one place and the other sharing other stuff, because if you have a full node and you have your you know what I'm trying to say. I'm a
No,
little
it's
bit
exactly right.
tired.
Like I have two identical boxes, and I have Pocket nodes on each and blockchains on each. If I put all the Pocket nodes on one and all the blockchains on one, which makes more sense in your head, right? Like then they would be, like you said, competing for resources at the exact same time. So I split them up.
No,
Yeah.
no. What I'm trying
Oh.
to say is not quite that. It's a
Okay.
little bit nuanced. Yeah. No, because that would be dumb for me to say that. It's like if you can give your Pocket node, like you have a machine with several different chains that you're running, but if you can give your Pocket node one disk of its own, then sometimes you get a peak that you have to service a lot of requests or whatever, and your Pocket node is going to be busy doing that, but it's going to be able to ask the other nodes that you have, and there will be no competition between your Pocket node and your other nodes that you use for servicing. That was the idea behind it.
Gotcha.
Well, that's
I
one of the
gotta-
questions that I know that we've chewed on in the past, because when we're looking at optimizing storage, right, any form of RAID means that you're going to be eating up some amount of drive space in the Stripe, duplicating data across drives. So, is 2 really that much better than 1? If you're looking at like storage optimization?
I think 2 is better than 1 for convenience. 2 is definitely not better for 1 as far as splitting IOPS between your apps. It's much more convenient and pretty close to 1, close enough to 1 for me.
Gotcha.
I think, yeah, for 1, you just have well, and I think for actually, let me ask this for RAID 0, Alex, with you, because you had mentioned software RAID, and that's actually what I was thinking about with all of this. With a software RAID, with Linux, though, you still have to get all the drives all together and RAID them together, and you can't just dynamically add more drives to your RAID pool. That is that right?
Yeah, you can't grow a RAID 0 as far as I'm aware with Madam.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that you can scale more with RAID 0 or something. It's just it takes less time trying to figure out which app should be on which drive, and then if one app starts to push out one,
Yeah, exactly. There's another type of RAID called JBOD.
Convenience. Okay.
Yeah, there's another RAID called JBOD, just a bunch of disks, and that's more what you're thinking of, where it's like, oh, you can just add another one and adds it to a pool, but that's definitely not RAID 0.
Yeah. Okay. Because does anyone have? Because I believe ZFS has some RAID capabilities where you can add.
I wouldn't touch I wouldn't do ZFS RAID on for blockchains. I've got a hop, but you've got Irving and Shane and other experts here that can handle it. Thanks for coming, everyone. Cheers.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah. Kind of with my setups that I'm looking at, I'm definitely leaning more towards 1, in general, just because I know I can get maximum out of it. But as Alex said, it does take kind of more planning, and it also depends on what the I feel like what nodes I'm going to be putting on which how I do it. Basically, I'm probably going to end up doing some 1 and some 2, where I have potentially Pocket nodes on 1 because they have their usage spikes, but then have certain chains that don't have really heavy read and write requirements, potentially putting them on a RAID 0 or something like that. So ultimately, I don't think it has to be a 1 or the other. You can kind of mix and match to what kind of meets your needs in terms of convenience, but then also speed and capability.
Beautiful. That's a very comprehensive answer for those looking at deep dives on your storage structure. Any other final questions before we wrap up here? We're coming up on the top of the hour. Going once. Going twice. All right. Well, it's been another deeply informative office hours call from the Node Runners crew, and with literally some of the best experts possible on these calls. So, anytime you need that high level input, or you're dealing with something that seems like completely over your head and you're not sure about, make sure that you're on these calls weekly on Wednesdays at noon Eastern. So just stay on top of that. But thanks for coming, y'all. Appreciate your time, and we'll talk again soon.